Detecting the impending apocalypse, searching for a suitable host to parasitize. Confirm with 3 draft heads? Then bind to the Apocalypse space system, reborn 7 days before the apocalypse. At this moment, everyone is playing at the beach, but I have already resolutely sold my house and am fully stockpiling supplies. I suddenly woke up, still with the fear of being surrounded by a group of mutant beasts lingering in my heart. However, the scene before me shocked me. This was actually my bedroom before the apocalypse. I was dazed for a few seconds, then suddenly realized something and hurriedly picked up the phone on the bedside table to check the time. May 18, 2043, 6 a.m. I was reborn. In my previous life, I was heartlessly pushed out of the car by my second uncle's family in Lu Ruyan, and eventually died horribly in the mouths of mutant beasts. Suddenly, a voice sounded in my mind, bind to the space? To bind, please input 3 draft heads. Immediately after, a flash of white light appeared before my eyes. My consciousness was brought into a strange space, all white and vast, reminding me of the second year of the apocalypse in my previous life. When humans began to evolve, and a small number of survivors awakened special abilities, including some with space abilities. I controlled my consciousness to take a look around the space and found a thick white mist at the edge. Outside, the mist seemed to be blocked by a mysterious force. I did not forcibly break through the white mist because I had a premonition that the area covered by the mist would definitely bring me a bigger surprise. In the next hour, to verify the use of the space, I began to use my mind to put items from the room into the space. The space accepted everything. All movable items in the entire house were taken in by it. Just as I was about to take everything out, a voice suddenly appeared in my mind, gold item detected. Use it for space upgrade? My gaze fell on a dark red box on the coffee table, where there was a 48-gram gold bracelet. Could gold be used for space upgrade? As soon as I said that, the gold bracelet instantly turned into a faint golden light and rushed into the white mist. I carefully observed the space. Everything seemed unchanged. Only the white mist seemed to have receded a bit and become lighter, but it was still unclear what was behind it. Although the upgrade effect was mediocre, in the bedroom, items like gold are not even as good as a ham sausage. I used my mind to put all the items in the space back to their original positions. My heart was filled with joy. With such a large space to stockpile supplies, I would definitely live a carefree life in the apocalypse. You see, time inside the space is frozen, no matter what is put in. When taken out, it is exactly the same as when it was put in. After roughly understanding how to use the space, I began to prepare for stockpiling supplies. Time was tight, only 7 days until the apocalypse, and there was too much to stockpile. I could not waste a single second. I turned on the computer and started listing the supplies. In my previous life, after the abnormal high temperatures, super typhoons, acid rain, torrential rain, extreme cold, and other natural disasters came one after another. The medicine list alone filled 3 full pages of paper. Many medicines were expensive and hard to buy. I didn't have time to go from pharmacy to pharmacy. I directly found a high school classmate who worked as a salesperson at a pharmaceutical company and sent him the list. 5 minutes later, the high school classmate called, saying the quantity of this medicine list was a bit large. He asked me what I was buying so much for and if I was sure I wasn't joking. I told him of course not. A friend was going to do charity. The only requirement was to see the goods within 3 days. I could pay a deposit. I asked him how much was appropriate. He said no deposit needed. He was calling to confirm the purpose of the medicines. He also had a batch of medicines with short shelf lives, less than 6 months left. If it's for charity, then forget it. My heart stirred. Shelf life didn't matter, I had the space. Never expires. I must get them. Bring me that batch of medicines tomorrow. As well. No time to talk more, I hung up the phone. I transferred 200,000 to him. After a quick calculation of the supplies I needed to stockpile, I found it was far from enough. I still needed to get money, and preferably within today. I had to gather the money all at once, otherwise, making money while stockpiling would waste too much time. After submitting loan applications on various lending apps, I set my sights on the house I was living in. I took the property deed and left, grabbing a quick bite at the restaurant near the entrance. After eating something casually, I drove my little BMW to the bank. My house is in Bun community in the center of Nanyang City. Built 8 years ago, my house has an interior area of 160 ping. According to the current market, 1 ping is about 50,000, so selling it now would fetch at least over 8 million. But I was in a hurry, so the bank only gave me 6.5 million. No time to haggle with them. I left the bank with 6.5 million, plus the 1.3 million I had withdrawn from other banks. My account now had a total of 17.9 million. It was already 3 p.m. The temperature outside had reached 48 degrees Celsius. Standing out there felt like being in a steamer. My t-shirt was soaked through with sweat, but I couldn't afford to waste time. I drove to a used car dealership. I sold the little BMW I was driving for a low price of 150,000, then turned around and rented a box truck. As soon as I got in the car, I received a call from an old acquaintance, Lu Hao, whom I had run into at lunch near the residential area. Lu Hao was a veteran, only 21 years old, working at a decoration company. His company was not far from the hospital, so he rented a room there. I had known him in my past life. He had handled the decoration for many homes in the neighborhood, including 1603 next door to me. That was his project, but we weren't close before the apocalypse. We only started getting to know each other when we went out to scavenge supplies together. We were about the same age, and neither of us was scheming, so we got along well. Lu Hao was a straightforward and decent person. Knowing I had many people to support, he would always look out for me and give me a little extra supplies. One time, when our scavenging squad clashed with other survivors, Lu Hao even took a blow meant for me, so I've always been grateful to him. But not long after that, I never saw him again. Meeting Lu Hao again brought up a flood of emotions. Although I swore in this life that I wouldn't easily trust anyone, I also don't like owing others. I'll find a chance to repay this debt to Lu Hao. Lu Hao called to tell me he had already found workers and materials and could start renovating my place anytime. In fact, earlier today at home, I had already contacted a few decoration companies, but my requirements were too specific, and they weren't keen on taking the job. After all, it was just replacing windows, security screens, and the main door, plus adding a few wall cabinets. And the materials I wanted were special, leaving too little profit. Plus, the weather was so hot. Even if they took the job, I'd have to wait in line, but I couldn't afford to wait. Luckily, I ran into Lu Hao. So I handed the task to him and promised him 20,000 yuan if he could get it done. I was surprised by how efficient Lu Hao was. I had expected it to take 2 to 3 days, but he managed it in just a few hours. I really appreciated his capability and felt I needed a helper right now, since working alone was just too inefficient. I remembered Lu Hao mentioning earlier that due to the heat, the commercial district had power rationing. So he had been working from home recently. So I asked Lu Hao if he was interested in a part-time job, basically as my assistant. Work for half a month and I'll pay you 50,000. Lu Hao was thrilled. Working at the decoration company, he earned at most a little over 10,000 in a good month, and as little as 5 or 6,000. Suddenly being offered 50,000 for just half a month's work, but he had been working for a year or two, so he wasn't completely naive. He knew there's no such thing as a free lunch. Paying that much for just half a month, would he be asked to do something illegal? After learning that the job was just running errands, and he could directly refuse any unethical tasks, Lu Hao happily accepted the part-time job. After hanging up, I immediately transferred 20,000 yuan to him as an advance on his salary. As for the decoration tip, that 20,000 and the remaining 30,000 in wages would be settled together after half a month. Lu Hao was honest and didn't dare take too much. Since he was now my assistant, there was no reason to accept a tip. I didn't say much more. I sent him my home address and door lock code, telling him to hurry over and take measurements while it was still light out. I drove to the largest comprehensive wholesale market in Nanyang. I drove around and found the biggest grain and oil store. I spent over $1 million to buy out the entire store, including 5 tons of salt alone. Salt is too vital for the human body. You can't last long without it. In the 3rd year of the apocalypse, I saw someone trade 1 pack of salt for 10 gene of grain. The weather was so hot that the shop owner didn't want to stay. Clearing out his inventory in one go was perfect for him. He practically treated me like a long-lost brother. He even voluntarily gave me a 5% discount. I figured with so much stuff, it would take several trips and hours. So I asked the owner if there were any warehouses for rent nearby. I still wanted to buy other things. The owner ran out and said he'd check at a village near the market for me. In just 2 minutes, he came back sweating profusely. Little brother, I asked around for you. There really is a warehouse over 5,000 square meters. When do you need it? I immediately replied. Right now. I handed the owner a cigarette. After taking it, he said, I'll take you there right now. The rental warehouse belongs to a nearby bottled water shop owner. I took the chance to buy all the bottled water from his store, including small bottles and large barrels. That adds up to about 100 tons. Water is incredibly scarce after the apocalypse. Besides this water, I needed to stock more. I also bought over 100 5-ton storage tanks. With water tanks and purification tablets, I plan to store water day and night. Next, I rushed to the vegetable wholesale area, the meat wholesale area, the seasoning wholesale area, the grain, fruit, and vegetable seed wholesale area, the instant food wholesale area, the appliance wholesale area, and the tissue wholesale area. After renting that warehouse, I had the goods delivered there. Just then, Lu Hao had finished the measurements and construction would start tomorrow. I called him over to receive the shipment. I told him to notify me when all the goods arrived. By the time I left the wholesale market, it was almost dark. I drove to the city's largest outdoor supplies store, and coincidentally, it was having a clearance sale. Everything was discounted, some items as low as 70% off. This store was already known for great value. And now I was getting a steal. Disaster first aid kits, tents, fire axes, safety ropes, binoculars, and more. I bought every item I could think of, and all of the best quality, since these were life-saving supplies. I also bought 10 assault boats and rubber rafts. I initially wanted more polar cold weather gear, but the store didn't have the kind I needed. The kind that withstands temperatures of minus 60 to 70 degrees. Luckily, the owner contacted a colleague from another city. After checking that store's cold weather gear, I decided to buy a full set from head to toe and had it shipped express. It would arrive tomorrow. The owner, finally meeting such a big customer, had all his staff work overtime to help load everything onto my truck. Several people worked together, and in less than 10 minutes, it was loaded. I drove off, found a remote spot, and stored all the goods into my space. Just then, Lu Hao called. I felt an overwhelming sense of security. These supplies would last me years in the apocalypse. Boss Xiang, why are you stocking so much food and drink? Planning to open a supermarket? Lu Hao didn't understand why I suddenly bought so much grain. I made up an excuse and let him leave. As soon as Lu Hao was gone, I locked the door and placed my hand on the supplies. The warehouse, which had been half full, instantly became empty. Seeing the scene before me, I couldn't help but laugh. It was already 10 o'clock, time to get some weapons. I drove to the western outskirts, searched for over half an hour, and finally found the place among a stretch of single-story houses. Inside the store, a woman in her 30s, wearing a floral slip dress, was sitting behind the counter. When she saw me come in, she just glanced at me, and then went back to playing a mahjong game on her phone. This store was a place I had heard about from a powerful figure in the first year of the apocalypse. On the surface, it was a small grocery store, but in reality, it held a big secret. I walked up to the counter and said, "Give me a pack of Huazi." Without lifting her head, the woman asked, "Hard or soft?" "The hardest kind." The woman's hand paused as she was playing a card, then she finally looked up. She reached into the counter, pulled out a hard pack of Huazi, and tossed it on the counter. I looked her in the eye and said, "That cheap? Isn't it 17 yuan a pack outside? Or is this pack not hard enough? Got anything harder?" The woman squinted, looking wary. "Who sent you?" "Big Cannon." Big Cannon was the powerful figure I met in the apocalypse. We were heading to a base together when we ran into another faction on the road. A fight broke out. Though Big Cannon had firearms, they were outnumbered. He realized they were losing and got surrounded. At the critical moment, I charged into the crowd and saved him. After that, we grew closer, and Big Cannon often told me stories of his glory days on the streets. That was when I learned about this store and the code. When the woman heard the name Big Cannon, her expression relaxed. She got up, closed the store door first, then walked to the back room. At the corner, she pulled aside an iron plate, revealing a staircase. Without another word, she entered and descended the stairs. The basement was filled with various goods. She walked to an iron door and knocked in a pattern of 323. 5 seconds later, the door was pulled open by a middle-aged man with a big beard. He was the boss of this place. The boss glanced at me and immediately sensed that this young man was no pushover, with his clean-cut appearance. But eyes don't like calm and cold, they hinted at blood on his hands. "Come in with me," the burly man said, turning into the room. I followed him in. The woman closed the door outside. "What do you want?" the burly man asked. I looked around. The room wasn't stocked with much, only one wall covered in weapons. There wasn't even a submachine gun. My eyes landed on a compound crossbow hanging in a corner of the wall. Its black bow body, with sleek lines, exuded lethality. I'd seen someone use this kind of weapon in the apocalypse. Low operational difficulty, easy to assemble and disassemble as needed, and most importantly, it wasn't even louder than a pistol. In the early years of the apocalypse, it was extremely useful, and the bolts could be reused. The cost-performance ratio is incredible. How many of these do you have? I pointed at the compound crossbow. 10, the burly man smirked. This kid knew his stuff. I'll take them all. How many bolts come with them? About 300. I nodded. I'll take those too. I want to go to the land of the free. It's too free there, I need to get some submachine guns and such. The burly man laughed. He led me into another secret room, filled with all kinds of firearms. My heart leaped with joy. 3 handguns and 3 kings of guns. I cleared out all the ammunition stock. As for other various hot weapons and precision equipment, I didn't bother. Too expensive, and worst of all, they wouldn't work well in the apocalypse. A few months later, the entire blue planet would be in extreme cold. The apocalypse was an era for cold weapons. These flashy firearms sometimes couldn't even compare to cold steel. Finally, I asked for 10 cookery knives, 10 daggers, 10 straight-edge knives, 5 sets of top-tier military cold-weather combat suits, 5 sets of slash-resistant suits, and 5 sets of bulletproof vests. After loading everything with the burly man, it was already past 2 in the morning. Let's say 50 tons each, the burly man thought for a moment. 3 million. I laughed in disbelief. He was treating me like a fat sheep. When I was buying weapons earlier, the prices were already extortionate. If I hadn't known the exact market value, I would have been completely ripped off. I haggled the prices down. Now he's pulling this again. I chuckled. At most, I'll pay 1.5 million. If you really can't swing it, forget it. I said this not to force the burly man to lower the price, but because I genuinely felt the price was too high. I still needed to save money for other things. Honestly, all the supplies I stocked up today were bought just in case. If I couldn't get any particular item, I didn't really care, I could always find another channel, so I wasn't about to be taken for a ride. But if this burly man played fair, I wouldn't mind letting him make a small profit. The burly man thought for a moment. He nodded. I gave him the address to deliver the goods tomorrow, then drove off. When I reached a remote side road, I stopped the car and stored all the weapons in my space. Only then did I continue. By the time I got home, it was nearly 4 in the morning. I entered the space and took a look. So many supplies in the space, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. I shook my head helplessly. Still broke. At 8 in the morning, I was woken up by Lu Hao's call. After I washed up, Lu Hao arrived with the workers. I gave them a few simple instructions. Then went downstairs. Time to collect the money. Li Yun was still as good at pretending as ever. A kind smile on her face. Xiao Sen, haven't you had breakfast yet? Let your auntie cook you your favorite lean meat noodles, okay? Watching her masterful performance, I felt nothing but disgust. In my past life, I was fooled by her feigned kindness, believing they were my closest family. Countless times I risked my life for them. Now I realize this family never actually did anything for me except offer empty words of concern. And their affection was built on the inheritance and connections left by my parents. And my willingness to lend them money unconditionally. Thinking of all this, my eyes grew colder. No need. Let's just get this over with quickly. I have things to do. Li Yun's eyes reddened, her face full of reluctance. Xiao Sun, we're your last family in this world. Do you really have to go this far with us? I couldn't help but laugh. Enough, Ms. Li. Stop acting. No matter what you say today, I'm not letting you off for a single cent of that 5 million. Zhang Jianjun's family finally dropped their masks, no longer putting on a pleasant face for me, but I couldn't care less. In my eyes, these people were all about to die, and die horribly at that. Have you really thought this through? Once this is over, we're completely cutting ties as family. I said coldly, just transfer the money now. Zhang Jianjun was so angry he nearly passed out. He tossed the confidentiality agreement in front of me. I cheerfully flipped through it. It was pretty much what I'd expected. Basically, it said that Zhang Jianjun's seizure of the factory was done and over with, and I was never to bring it up again. After I received the transfer, I signed it casually. With another 5 million in my card, I drove off feeling satisfied. I went to my favorite breakfast spot and enjoyed a hearty meal. I ate 2 baskets of soup dumplings all by myself. 1 basket of steamed juicy buns, 2 fried dough sticks, and a bowl of soy milk. That finally filled me up. Just as I was leaving, it suddenly hit me. Since there's no passage of time in my space, I might as well stock up on ready-made meals. I'll definitely be too lazy to cook a lot of the time later. I negotiated with the owner, 200 portions each of various buns, fried dough sticks, steamed buns, and wontons, to be delivered daily for the next 5 days. Then I placed orders at all my favorite restaurants, ordering my favorite dishes, 100 portions each, also delivered daily for 5 days. To avoid suspicion, I made up an excuse that it was for the factory's staff meals or welfare lunches. After handling the food, I drove to the fresh market. At the fresh market, I ordered nearly a ton of assorted live fish, requiring all to be gutted and descaled. Next, I also ordered 2 tons each of chicken, duck, pork, beef, mutton, as well as chicken and duck eggs, plus some fresh shrimp and crab. This trip cost about 1 million. Since the fish had to be killed fresh, not only did I have to pay processing fees, but it would also take 3 days to deliver everything. I didn't mind, though. I'd be at the warehouse these days anyway, receiving all the food deliveries from the restaurants. Obviously, Lu Hao alone wasn't enough manpower. For convenience and to keep Lu Hao from knowing too much, I hired a few more people, specifically to handle receiving and unloading at the warehouse. After finishing the fresh food purchases, I headed to the timber market. A few days after the heavy rain, the entire city would lose power. Then the extreme cold would cause natural gas pipelines worldwide to leak violently due to the low temperatures. At that point, humanity's need for fire would become immense. Without fire, there would be no cooked food or hot meals, and most survivors would live like primitive people. Countless people would die from hypothermia. So, timber and coal would become extremely important for humans trying to survive the apocalypse. Altogether, that was just over 1 million. Adding in today's payments to the restaurants, I still had 6 million left. After this trip, Lu Hao called and said the glass and doors at home had been replaced. The fireplaces in the living room and bedroom were also installed. I went back to check and found everything was done very well. Especially the 2 new doors. I tested them with a sledgehammer. Both doors were extremely sturdy. With my current strength, my hand was numb from the impact, and the door only lost a bit of paint. Plus, the top, middle, and bottom of each door were reinforced with a 10 cm thick steel door bolt. Now, unless someone breaks down the wall, nobody can get in. And if it comes to breaking the wall, I'm not afraid either. The hot weapons I've stockpiled in my space are more than enough to take care of anyone who tries. There's also a small opening at the top of the door for me to fight back from. After leaving the house, I paid Lu Hao for the renovation costs and told him to settle with the workers. Right after Lu Hao left, I got a call from my high school classmate saying all the medicine had been delivered. I had him come straight to my house. Half an hour later, my high school classmate came up with a colleague, carrying over a dozen large boxes into the living room. All here. No need for pleasantries, my high school classmate said. I didn't hold back either. It wasn't that I didn't trust him, but these were life-saving supplies. I couldn't afford any mistakes. I carefully checked everything. There were bandages, disinfectant alcohol, cold medicine, fever reducers, antibiotics, tetanus vaccines, and all kinds of anti-inflammatory drugs, everything. I paid the remaining 1 million, and my classmate refunded me 50,000 as a commission, thanking me for helping him land such a big order. I smiled. We'd had a decent relationship over the years, helping each other out. The climate this year is too unusual. Usually, such extreme heat is followed by some natural disaster. To be safe, you'd better stock up on long shelf-life food and supplies at home. Hearing this, my classmate looked serious and nodded, thanking me. I don't know if he took my advice to heart, but I'd done what I could. After seeing him off, I closed the door, stored all the medicine in my space, and then called Lu Hao. He told him to drive to the vegetable and fruit bases to find large quantities of cheap fresh produce. After arranging that, I drove to the warehouse. The fresh goods had arrived, and I was about to head out when the courier delivered 2 huge boxes. I signed for them, carried them inside, and opened them to check. The cold weather gear I bought yesterday was decent quality. By the time I reached the warehouse, it was almost dark. I checked the inventory, and seeing no issues, I let the workers leave. I closed the door and pressed my palm against the stacks of supplies again and again. In no time, the warehouse was empty once more, with only puddles of water on the floor proving something had been there. I went out for a meal. Then sat in the warehouse. Soon, people from various restaurants began arriving. With the prepared meals, 200 portions from each place, not a huge amount. Each delivery took only about 10 minutes, from driving in to unloading and leaving. As soon as they left, I immediately stored the food into my space. All 7 or 8 restaurants finished delivering and unloading in just 2 hours. By 8 in the evening, it was half an hour before the firewood, coal, and gas were due. The firewood arrived first, 30 semi-trailers. 700 tons of it. Just unloading took several hours. The gas delivery guy showed up in the middle. After everything was unloaded, I closed the door and stored it all in my space. I had ordered too much coal, and the supplier couldn't spare the manpower to deliver it on time, so I told them to come tomorrow instead. Just then, the bearded guy delivering gasoline and diesel arrived. After confirming the goods were fine, I paid the balance. After the fuel was unloaded, I didn't rush to store it. That bearded guy had been around for years and was full of tricks. I waited over an hour. And only after confirming he was gone did I put everything into my space. On the way home, I got another call from Lu Ruyan, which I hung up immediately. Ever since I caught her being all lovey-dovey with her 20-year-old son yesterday, she had been calling me non-stop, but I never answered. She was probably desperate to win me back and eager to apologize. I sneered inwardly, no rush, she'll have plenty of chances to apologize later. The next morning, I got up and checked the outside temperature. It was already 50 degrees, and tomorrow it would likely hit 54. I drove to the supplier. I had to admit, Luhao was really efficient. Even a warehouse this remote and huge, he managed to find. With the heat this extreme, the boss, worried the fruits and vegetables would spoil, gave me a rock-bottom price. I went all out and spent 1.5 million to empty the entire warehouse. Now I had just about every kind of fruit and vegetable on the market. Enough to last a lifetime. I only had just over 3 million left. I called the snowmobile dealer I'd ordered from earlier and learned they had arrived. Excited, I went to pick them up. 10 snowmobiles cost nearly $500,000. No need for delivery, my box truck could carry them. After hauling them to a remote spot, I stored them in my space. Then I drove to the largest mall in Nanyang, bought an iced Americano, and suddenly realized I'd never have this again after the apocalypse. So I hit up several of my old coffee shops, ordering 200 iced coffees from each, and 100 bags of coffee beans. I also bought 5 coffee machines, spending about 100,000 in total. It was the hottest summer on record, so all the down jacket stores were having sales, and quilts weren't selling at all. Quilts were completely unsellable. I waved my hand generously and bought 100 thick down comforters, 200 summer blankets, and 500 sets of bed sheets and duvet covers, clearing out several shops. I also got 100 sets of thermal underwear, 100 wool sweaters, and 2,000 pairs of socks. This trip cost over $500,000, leaving me with less than $1 million. I decided to stop. The remaining money was just enough to settle daily payments to the restaurants. At this point, I had stockpiled all the essential supplies, enough for me to live comfortably through the apocalypse. I sat in the box truck while workers loaded the coffee and bedding batch by batch. After collecting everything, I went to the warehouse. The coal and fruits had arrived. When Luhao saw me, he checked the inventory with me, asked nothing, handed over the keys, and was about to leave. I transferred him 50,000 as his assistant's salary and warned him the weather was extremely abnormal. He'd better stock up on supplies. Luhao didn't say much, just nodded and left. After finishing the collection of supplies, I waited a bit longer until the meals from various hotels were delivered. I stashed everything into the space before heading back. I finished work earlier today, arriving home just past 9 in the evening. I took a bath to wash off the fatigue, then pulled out the large-capacity hard drive I had bought. I started downloading all kinds of learning materials, movies, TV shows, and the like. The learning materials were to help me live better in the apocalypse. For example, knowledge about various types of machinery, while the movies and TV shows were purely for killing time. After all, spending days alone in the apocalypse is incredibly boring. This time around, with my space, I naturally wouldn't choose to enter a base. The next morning, too lazy to go out, I took a breakfast from my space. After a quick meal, I stayed home and focused on improving my physical fitness, training until I was completely exhausted. My current body was too weak, I basically had to rely on tools. My only task today was to pick up the prepared meals. I no longer had them delivered to the warehouse. Instead, I found a location close to all the hotels, drove the box truck there, and had them stagger their delivery times. After collecting all the meals, it was just dinner time. I still had some cash left, so I decided to take Lu Hao out for a meal. We went to the most expensive seafood buffet in Nanyang. Lu Hao came from an ordinary family and had never eaten anything so expensive. He was quite emotional about it. After eating, we drove home. Passing by a supermarket, I remembered I had forgotten to buy toiletries. So I had Lu Hao stop the car, and we went inside. I headed straight for the toiletries section. I bought a large pile of towels, bath towels, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shampoo, body wash, hand soap, and so on. Since I had bought so many things, I directly called over a staff member to help me check out first. Then I called another staff member and had them pack up all the long shelf-life foods on the shelves, such as bread, self-heating hot pots, self-heating rice, sausages, instant noodles, and the like. I had them pack according to a budget of 20,000 yuan. I also had Lu Hao grab a few bags of rice, flour, and cooking oil, as well as boxed noodles. Lu Hao exclaimed in surprise, "Boss, is it really necessary to buy so much? We're almost there. Just buy a little. You're living alone anyway, and these things won't expire easily." Lu Hao sighed silently. If he had known that this 20,000 yuan would end up back in his hands in this form, he might as well have just accepted it directly. We left the supermarket and continued heading home. When we were almost home, both of our phones received a news push notification, urgent notice. Our city will experience a super typhoon tonight at 10 o'clock, with wind speeds expected to reach levels 16 to 17. All schools and work must suspend operations, except for special positions ensuring public welfare, those still at work should evacuate as soon as possible. Citizens, please do not go out unless necessary. Lu Hao saw the news and turned to look at me. "Boss, you're really something. There really is a natural disaster." I didn't have time to respond to him, my mind was full of shock. The super typhoon had arrived early. What's going on? Why did it change? I didn't have time to think too much. I had other things to do. I stepped on the accelerator. 5 minutes later, the box truck stopped at the entrance of Lu Hao's building. Fortunately, the supermarket staff had helped pack everything into large boxes. I helped Lu Hao carry the stuff into his house. On the way, we ran into two unfamiliar neighbors but didn't greet them. Lu Hao felt a bit embarrassed to have me help with the work. "Boss, just leave it in the living room." I insisted on helping him carry it into the room. After putting everything down, I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, Lu Hao never mentioned anything about a natural disaster later on. I turned around and looked at Lu Hao seriously. "I feel this typhoon isn't that simple. If it's really what I suspect, then the things we bought today might save your life. But they could also cost you your life. So remember, no matter how much others offer you for these things, don't sell them. It's best not to let anyone know you have these supplies." After saying that, I didn't care about Lu Hao's reaction and turned to leave. In my previous life, I had already repaid the favor of that one blow. If Lu Hao was unlucky again, it would only be his own fault. I drove the box truck to a secluded corner, then stowed it into my space. From the space, I released another car I had rented from the rental company, a black Hummer, sturdy enough to drive through the typhoon. I changed into a black tactical jacket, put on a baseball cap and a black mask, and then got into the car. I took out a map of Nanyang from my space, with several circles drawn in red pen. Those were my destinations for tonight. The black Hummer drove through the night like a giant beast. The vanguard of the super typhoon had arrived. From time to time, the howl of strong winds echoed on the streets. Over half an hour later, the black Hummer came to a steady stop outside a warehouse park. This was the largest warehouse area in Nanyang, housing the warehouses of Tmall Supermarket and JD Supermarket. It's all here. Most importantly, there's a cold storage facility here. It's a warehouse of a large meat processing company. Because of the low terrain, during the heavy rain after the strong typhoon, it will be completely flooded on the first day. Ordinary people wouldn't find supplies here. I agilely climb over the fence into the compound. My figure disappears into the darkness like a ghost. I move swiftly, and within 2 minutes I reach the supermarket's warehouse. The warehouse door has a sensor lock, but that's no problem for me. I take out a sledgehammer from my space. One swing shatters the lock. I run inside, and my heart leaps with joy at the sight of the warehouse. Fortunately, these supplies haven't been moved. The warehouse spans tens of thousands of square meters, densely stacked with all kinds of supplies. Just walking around it would take a while. I pull out a balance scooter from my space and ride it. Starting from the outermost row, I zip through quickly. Wherever I pass, massive amounts of supplies vanish into thin air. In less than 3 minutes, the vast warehouse has only the corners left, with some supplies that I haven't had time to deal with yet. Over these past few days, I'd been continuously stockpiling, worried that someone higher up might come and take the supplies first. In my past life, I also came to this warehouse. By then it had been completely cleared out. Clearly it was the authorities' doing, though I don't know when the authorities emptied the supplies here. I'm worried that the authorities might have gotten word before the disaster and cleared it out. To be safe, I cautiously stockpiled a batch of supplies enough for my own survival first. Next is the larger warehouse. After looting that one the same way, I move on to over a dozen smaller warehouses. I don't even know what's inside them, but I take everything into my space. Finally, I reach the cold storage. As soon as I enter, the sudden blast of cold air makes me shiver, but the sight inside sends me into ecstasy. In the tens of thousands of square meters of cold storage are densely hung pork, beef, lamb, and all kinds of poultry. So much meat it must be over 1,000 tons, enough for me to eat for a lifetime. If I don't take this meat, after the storm cuts off electricity, it'll all rot within 3 days at most. To let them die a worthy death, I have to work a bit harder and take it all into my space. To be safe, and to prevent anyone from coming to transfer supplies during the typhoon, I also go to the compound's surveillance room. One grenade later, the surveillance room is completely destroyed. That way, no one will know how these supplies disappeared. After doing all this, I swagger out through the main gate of the compound. The strong typhoon has arrived, with howling winds. The Black Panther drives steadily down the road, heading toward the port city, a major port in the South Seas for shipping all kinds of supplies. Unlike the warehouse compound, this place is guarded. When I arrive, I see thousands of shipping containers neatly stacked at the port. The Black Panther stops where the surveillance cameras can't reach. I get out and ride my balance scooter into the port. Over 20 minutes later, the thousands of containers vanish without a trace. Next is a large warehouse-style supermarket that just recently opened. On the way home, this supermarket is famous for its value for money. You need a membership card to shop there. I don't have one, but I have a sledgehammer. One swing shatters the glass. Holy smokes! This is the biggest supermarket I've ever seen. Feels like a large mall. The lights are off inside. Wearing a headlamp and riding my balance scooter, I start my $0 shopping. On the first floor, the daily necessities section, adhering to the principle of leaving no item behind, is quickly swept clean by me. When I reach the food section on the basement level, my eyes widen instantly. If I had known the operation would go so smoothly, I wouldn't have had to work so hard stockpiling like crazy these past few days. Roast chicken, durian cake, red wine, cigars, and all kinds of unsold prepared foods all become my loot. I mutter under my breath, and the items around me disappear in the blink of an eye. Next, I step into the second basement level. Holy smokes, the stuff here is even more astonishing, a mountain of bizarre and unusual items, almost touching the ceiling. After spending over 40 minutes, I finally walk out of the empty Sam's Club supermarket. Today's mission is complete. Full of joy, I prepare to head home. On the way, I need to cross a section of railway. A freight train. Excitement surges in my heart. I quickly take out binoculars from my space. Due to the dim sky and continuous rain, I can only vaguely see dark shapes on it, but can't make out what they are. I hesitate only for a moment, then the Black Panther drives forward and reaches the train. I finally see what's in the cars: coal. There's no one around. Clearly the staff have been evacuated. I roughly count this freight train has at least 70 or 80 cars. It's all coal, at least several thousand tons. Even though I don't need coal right now. But since I encountered it, how could I let it go? In my past life, I had also searched for supplies on such freight trains. Nowadays, most train carriages are connected with chain couplers. These couplers are easy to unlock and can be operated by hand. If I weren't worried about insufficient space, I would have stuffed the entire train into my space. After unlocking 2 couplers, I began to collect the carriages one by one into my space. It took less than a minute to unlock a coupler. In just an hour, only a lonely locomotive remained on the tracks. I thought for a moment, forget it, I'll take the locomotive too. Otherwise, it would be pitiful left here alone. Besides, the locomotive might come in handy later. After all, my space is large enough to hold it. Once the locomotive was collected, I continued moving stealthily, secretly hoping for more surprises along the way. Unexpectedly, passing by a large gas station, I saw 6 huge tanker trucks parked inside. I drove closer and found these tanker trucks were all full. Each truck could hold about 40 tons of fuel. It seemed they hadn't had time to unload yet. What a bargain for me. After collecting the tanker trucks, I originally wanted to check how much fuel was left in the storage tanks, but the typhoon was getting stronger. My fuel reserve had already reached nearly 200 tons, enough for many years. Besides, even if I couldn't get fuel here next time, there would definitely be opportunities elsewhere. Thinking of this, I decisively drove away. The black Hummer sped off into the raging wind. As I drove on the road, I could clearly feel that there were far fewer vehicles than usual. Everyone must have rushed home to take shelter from the typhoon. The wind howled, sweeping trash and cardboard into the sky. The iron sheets on billboards were torn off, and many trees along the roadside were uprooted. Passing by a luxury car club, my gaze was inadvertently drawn to an RV inside. I really needed an RV. It was worth the small risk. I crashed my car through the glass of the dealership and got close to inspect the RV. The body and windows were bulletproof, the tires were anti-explosion and wear-resistant, and it was an amphibious vehicle. The roof was equipped with foldable solar panels. The RV was like a mobile home. Of course, essential for living and traveling. This RV seemed tailor-made for me. After storing the RV into my space, I began to carefully survey the luxury car club. I made a round, sweeping clean everything within sight. Over a dozen luxury cars were collected into my space. Although driving might not be an option later in the apocalypse, these vehicles are still useful for crushing enemies. This was an attack method I'd figured out a couple of days ago. If anyone dares to mess with me, I'll pull heavy objects from the space and hurl them at the target. There were also plenty of low-temperature tires in the club, a dozen or so oil drums, and roughly 500 to 600 liters of fuel. Dozens of barrels of engine oil and lubricants, even spare parts. I took everything into my space. After sweeping the first floor, I went up to the office on the second floor. The lavish decoration there was a sight to behold. Red wine, cigars, and a bunch of luxury-looking ornaments. Plus 2 safes all went into my space. Detected gold. Use it for upgrade? And gold, what an unexpected bonus. Upgrade, I said without hesitation. A blinding golden light flashed, and I clearly saw the white mist inside the space. Retreat a long way back. The mist also became much thinner, and I could even see what looked like ripples of flowing water inside. Could the space have its own water source? I had no time to investigate now. After spending over 30 minutes in the club, I prepared to leave. As I was leaving, I caught a glimpse of the corner, where 3 massive shipping containers were placed, each with waterproof seals on the doors. Containers of this size were either recently shipped from overseas or used to protect the club's valuable vehicles. My heart raced with excitement. I swung a sledgehammer and opened one of the containers. Inside was a world-class luxury off-road vehicle, arguably the most unstoppable vehicle on Earth. Neither extreme heat nor extreme cold could affect it. I gasped, took it into my space, and then opened another container. Having survived 8 years in the apocalypse, I thought I'd seen it all. But even I couldn't stay calm this time. The seal and the war shield, far surpassing almost every off-road vehicle on the planet. Suddenly, I felt that all the luxury cars I just collected paled in comparison to these 2 beasts. With a pounding heart, I stored both super combat vehicles into my space. Then came the last container. I opened its door and shone a high-powered flashlight inside. It was completely empty. Just a mess on the floor, a pile of rags and weeds, and a foul smell of animal droppings. I frowned. What on earth had been in here? Before I finished speaking, a black shadow came toward me. I stepped back in fright, and a dagger instantly appeared in my hand. I looked closely and saw it was a black cat. The cat meowed twice. It boldly stuck out its tongue and licked my face. I inexplicably started smiling. This cat gave me an urge to pet it. I put away the dagger and stroked its head. The black cat seemed even happier, rubbing its head against my neck. I could feel that although this cat was big, it was very thin, probably having been stuck in the container for a long time. I took the black cat down from my arms, crouched on the ground, and took out a sausage and a raw fish from my space. Go ahead, eat. You look so thin, you must be starving for a long time. The black cat meowed twice and ate happily. In the blink of an eye, the sausage and raw fish were devoured clean. I threw a few more fish and a box of sausages on the ground. patted the cat's head, and got up to leave. The black cat let out a couple of dazed meows. I didn't linger and strode out. The black cat seemed to realize I was going to abandon it, dropped the fish in its mouth, and rushed over like lightning. Just as I was about to step out the door, I felt something tugging at my foot. Looking down, I met the black cat's yellow eyes. It looked at me and meowed twice, its eyes full of grievance. The black cat climbed up my pants, leapt up, and hooked its front paws around my neck, still rubbing its head against me. I smiled bitterly. It's the apocalypse, how am I supposed to raise you? And I've never kept a pet before. The black cat meowed softly, still trying to rub its head against my neck. I thought about it. Forget it, I'll just bring you along. A cat doesn't eat much anyway, and there's plenty in my space. Raising a cat is no big deal. Seeing how clingy this little black cat was, if I raised it well, it might keep me company for many years in the apocalypse. After all, being alone is too boring. With that thought, I made up my mind. Alright, from now on you're with me. I have a bad temper, so you have to behave. If you don't, no food. Got it? The black cat looked at me pitifully and meowed softly twice. I carried the black cat back with one hand, put the sausages and fish I had thrown on the ground back into my space, and then also stored away the container. I had planned to leave for the cat. The sea wind had reached its peak, even shaking the Hummer slightly. I didn't dare get distracted and drove cautiously the whole way. A journey that normally took 20 minutes took nearly an hour, but fortunately I made it to the underground garage without incident. I drove the car to a blind spot in the surveillance, made sure no one was around, and stored the Hummer in my space. The black cat's eyes widened as it watched such a large car suddenly disappear. I patted its head. Although my storm coat was waterproof, it still had some water droplets on it. Afraid the black cat would be uncomfortable, I unzipped my jacket and tucked it inside. I carried it all the way home. There were still many things from tonight's zero-person shopping that I hadn't checked, especially the containers at the port. I scanned with my mind and saw that in the warehouse complex, aside from the meat and the cold storage, most of the other warehouses were full of snacks, clothing, daily necessities, and the like. After checking the supplies in the warehouse complex, I started dismantling the containers at the port. Most of these containers had packing lists attached. I didn't rush to open them but first glanced at the lists. I found that many boxes contained daily necessities, and each box held items of the same type. For example, one box was full of cashmere garments, including coats, cashmere sweaters, and pants. Some boxes held bedding, daily goods, canned drinks, beer, and so on. Next, I saw 4 extra large containers whose packing lists showed they all held off-road vehicles. Excited, I opened a container and found 8 off-road vehicles. Looking further, these large containers held fertilizer, coal, toys, crafts, and various luxury goods. Among them, a few containers of pet supplies, and a box of fitness equipment caught my interest. With these professional fitness tools, I could train my physique. After another hour, I came to a stack of green containers. These were refrigerated containers, usually containing fresh fruits and vegetables, meat, seafood, special medicines, and fresh high-end drinks. One person couldn't use so much, so I wasn't very happy, just keeping them for emergencies. If I meet someone in need later, I might trade them for some precious supplies. To my surprise, there were also many animal medicines and vaccines. Continuing to check further back, the main event arrived: all imported food. Dozens of tons of imported lamb chops and beef, and neatly stacked boxes of seafood. I hardly ate these things before the apocalypse. The next few boxes were industrial supplies, mechanical parts, tires, factory raw materials, etc. However, there were dozens of low-noise silent generators, which made me very happy. These generators were much better than the ones I had stockpiled before. Then I opened dozens more boxes. I uncovered several boxes of appliances, all imported international brands, like air conditioners, TVs, rice cookers, ovens, and so on. There was also a box of electronics, computers, tablets, phones, watches, all the latest models. Additionally, there was a box of kitchenware, with pots, pans, bowls, and dishes, everything. After unpacking monotonously for a while, I uncovered a box of drones. This was a great find, definitely useful later. Using the spatial ability consumed a lot of mental energy. I had used the space for so long today that my mental energy was already depleted. I took out a pile of pet supplies from the space. I checked the little black cat's body and found it was just thin from hunger, no other issues. I relaxed. After bathing the black cat and drying its fur, I poured a pile of cat food for it, and finally I could rest. Earlier, the light in the club was too dim. And then I was busy bathing it, so I hadn't paid much attention to the black cat's appearance. Now that I had free time, I looked closely and realized something was off. This cat seemed unlike any cat I had seen before. I searched everywhere and finally found a video. The creature in the video looked somewhat like the black cat, but it was a black jaguar. My heart skipped a beat. After further searching, I confirmed that what I had picked up wasn't a cat at all. It could weigh over 300 kg, with astonishing bite force. I couldn't help worrying it might attack me while I slept, breaking out in a cold sweat. But seeing this little one in my arms clinging to me, acting spoiled, my heart gradually relaxed. Why be afraid? Jaguars can be raised in captivity. The person who transported it must have intended to raise it. As long as I take good care of it, it will probably only recognize me as its owner when it grows up, and only obey me. Thinking of this, I burst into laughter. This time I really struck gold. The more I looked at the black cat, the more I liked it. I couldn't help stroking its head. It looked silly and cute. The little leopard was named Sada, and it was clearly satisfied with the name. Excitedly calling a few times and licking my hand. Since I decided to raise Sada well, I had to train it properly. It was already very late. I took out a large doghouse from the space for Sada to sleep in. After showering, I lay in bed and scrolled through my phone. I had to cherish the time when I could still go online, soon the phone would be useless. After scrolling through videos for a while, they were mostly extreme weather reports. A few people pessimistically expressed that the apocalypse was coming. A small number were worried about how long the typhoon would last, while more people were happy because they didn't have to go to work or school tomorrow. The moment the typhoon stops is the true arrival of the apocalypse. I closed the video site and opened WeChat. It was full of messages from Lu Ruyan. Probably because I had blocked his number, so he could only contact me via WeChat. The content was mostly apologies. I felt disgusted and directly logged out. Then, I glanced at the community owners group. I scrolled back a bit. Damn. This is the strongest wind I've ever seen in my life. Look at the billboard across the street, it's been blown down. Can the property management park my car in the underground garage? I saw some cars already damaged. Have you all stocked up on food at home? I have nothing at home. Should I stock up on some things? I want to stock up too. I see many people online saying the apocalypse is coming. Don't spread rumors in the group. If it causes panic, the neighborhood committee will definitely call the police. This person, speaking with bureaucratic tone, is Lu Showon, the deputy director of the neighborhood committee, sharp-tongued and fond of petty gains. Almost no one in the building wanted to argue with her, not out of fear, but because they felt it unnecessary. Most people in the group were young, and few had time to argue with this old lady. After watching for a few minutes, I turned off my phone, feeling it was no different from my previous life. I put down the phone. I glanced out the window. It had started raining, but the rain wasn't heavy yet. If I were determined to gather supplies, I could still go out and bring some back, but I doubted anyone in this building would step outside. Not only did the super typhoon arrive a day early, but the rain also came 2 days earlier than before. I didn't understand why this was happening. Still, I wasn't panicking. After all, I had so many supplies in my space, unless the earth exploded. I could just hunker down alone until the end of time. I stared quietly out the window, fragments of my past life flashing before my eyes. Crowds of people slaughtering each other, tortured to death by natural disasters. In my past life, I barely survived in this building. I practically fed half the building on my own, only to be betrayed during the final evacuation. I drifted from base to base, struggling to survive without any abilities, escaping death time and again, only to die at the hands of those closest to me. All of this weighed on my heart like a boulder. From the moment I was reborn, I swore I wouldn't help anyone in this life. Those who harmed me in my past life, I wouldn't let a single one off the hook. Maybe because my mental energy was drained, I slept straight through until 10 o'clock the next morning. It was only when Satan kept scratching at the door that I woke up. I got out of bed and opened the door. Seeing Satan's resentful little expression, I knew the little guy was hungry. I didn't give him any more sausages. Instead, I took out some dried fish and a bowl of cat food, and poured another bowl of milk. I don't like drinking milk myself. Leaving it there would just be a waste, and the little furball needed to grow. At first, Satan refused to eat the cat food. And he didn't want to drink the milk either. Naturally, I wasn't going to spoil him. I forced him to finish it all, even if it was just a snack. Satan ate everything obediently while looking wronged. I didn't take any food from my space. I cooked myself a bowl of tomato and egg noodles. After eating, I went to the slightly larger secondary bedroom and took out some fitness equipment from my space. I started physical training. With the past few days of practice, my stamina had improved. Though it couldn't compare to my past life, I should now be able to take on 2 or 3 ordinary men in hand-to-hand combat. After 2 hours of working out, I rested for a while and then began practicing with a blade. In my past life, my main weapons were straight knives or kukris. While practicing, a thought suddenly struck me. Now that I had a space ability, why couldn't I apply it in combat?